Would you believe I once worked at a dealership that did not provide us clean drinking water? Find out what made me decide to rat out that dealership right now. Let's go back to the past, about 10 years ago, my first day at this dealership. It was me and this other guy. We kind of worked in this like annexed building with, let's just say, like 5 lifts in there. And so his name was JR. He was giving me a tour of the dealership. I was asking him questions, how things worked, where things were. I remember him telling me like, oh yeah, there's a drinking fountain in the break room, but make sure you don't drink that water. It's not good for you. And I was like, what do you mean drinking that water is not good for you? And he's like, oh yeah, all the senior techs that have been here since the building was either remodeled or the building was built, they told him that they saw that water drinking station get put in, and since then the filters for that station have never been changed. And so I asked JR, so what are you doing for drinking water? And he said, well, I just go thirsty. And I was thinking, this is so ridiculous. You know, man. So from then on, me and JR, we took turns buying like a 5-gallon water jug with a built-in water dispenser. And so me and JR took turns buying that weekly so we could have clean water for ourselves. And so let me tell you about the water that the dealership provided us. Again, this water machine was put in about 10 years before my time when I started there. You know, the filters have never been changed, which I totally believed. I have in my notes, water from drinking machine had a subtle aftertaste. Tough to say what it tasted like, but it definitely tasted like something was wrong with the water. And if you can imagine drinking the water, it kind of had like a thick consistency on your tongue. And I remember like towards the end as you swallowed the water, it tasted like something not right, but I could never really put my finger on what it really tasted like. But yeah, no joke, the water literally tasted like something was wrong with it. If you drank like a couple cups, I would remember getting a headache in the afternoon, specifically after drinking the water. And I remember, you know, let's do like a test, right? That water is gonna be the only thing I drink. And yeah, sure enough, I was like, wow, that water really does give you a headache. It's funny now to think about it, and it was funny then because it was so ridiculous. But that drinking water machine was hooked up to the sink water. Here's one key thing about that sink water. The water that came out of that sink came out white, the color white. So yeah, you open the sink water, if you got a cup of water, the water would be colored white. I don't know what that is. I never tried even drinking the sink water. I'm not that adventurous of a person. So already, if it sounds like a third world country, it gets worse. So pretty much, if you worked in the service department, there was only one place for clean drinking water, and that was the customer break room. Technicians were forbidden from going inside the customer waiting room. And again, if you've watched the last video, you can kind of have an inkling why, right? We are dirty and uneducated. We don't look good as the front face of the building. We pretty much, we are untouchables. You don't want to see us. You want to throw us back in the pit with the leftover sewer water. You know, they can have that. And it's funny because the technicians would go to such great lengths to get a taste of clean drinking water that people would go the back way around the building and sneak into the customer waiting room just to get some clean drinking water. So at one point, GR left the dealership and they moved me to the main technician service area, right? The main building. Keep in mind, we still don't have clean drinking water. So I took it upon myself, little rectangle, I believe 3-gallon water jug with a built-in dispenser. And so I kept that 3-gallon dispenser in my stall. It became a hot commodity. I specifically remember my fellow technicians coming over with like their cup noodles, coming over with their water bottle with like a really guilty look on their face, like, hey Zeke, sorry man, do you mind if I get some water? And I all the time just like, yeah, of course man, you know, help yourself. And yeah, it's a little depressing to think about now, but to be guilty, to have to like borrow clean drinking water because we all know we're suffering. There's no clean drinking water for us to you know, either warm up our cup noodles or to literally hydrate ourselves. Literally the hardest working physical employees at the dealership, and we do not have clean drinking water. I'm just a regular guy, regular employee. I don't particularly look up like the labor laws and stuff, which, you know, as an employee, you really should to know your rights. So, you know, this kind of stuff doesn't happen. You work at a place that doesn't provide you with clean facilities or you know, basic necessities, clean drinking water, right? And so what I'm getting at is, I remember we had a car washer who used to work construction, and he said, you know, this is totally violating some sort of labor laws, because when he worked construction, it was something like, per this many people, there needs to be clean drinking water facilities every so feet. I was like, yeah, that totally makes sense. And for the entire service department, we don't have clean drinking water. At least for the technicians and the car washers, right? But who cares? We don't matter. Fast forward about 2 years, because I was only at that dealership 2.5 years, I think. So fast forward about 2 years, I pretty much got headhunted by another dealership. So, you know, pretty much a month in advance, I already knew that like I'm leaving this place. I don't really know what I was thinking at the time, but I remember thinking almost like getting back at this dealer for treating us so poorly. That's my honest thought right now, is like 2.5 years of service, devoting so much of my time and life and career to this dealership, only to be treated so poorly, in fact, that my basic human needs are not met, such as clean drinking water or bathroom facilities. And we'll get into bathroom facilities in a little bit. But so I decided, why don't we try to file an OSHA complaint against this dealership? So before we get into that, what is OSHA? OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health Administration, regulatory agency of the United States Department of Labor that originally had a federal visitorial powers to inspect and examine workplaces. OSHA's mission is to assure safe and healthy working conditions for working men and women by setting and enforcing standards and by providing training, outreach, education, and assistance. From past dealerships I worked at, I know you could have OSHA violations, so I'll just give you an example. You gotta separate like the garbage. Like garbage cannot be in oil. I know that sounds really basic, but I remember at one dealer we worked at, in the used oil filter containers, they also found like cardboard, and that's where they stored some cardboard and some garbage, and it would end up in the oil. And they had an OSHA violation because now your regular cardboard that's not recycled, it's turned into hazardous waste because it's covered in oil. So, you know, they got an OSHA violation for that. So with that in mind, knowing about workplaces getting OSHA violations, I was like, well, why don't I try to file a complaint against my dealership and see if they can get dinged for some violations. By the way, it's very easy to file an OSHA complaint. You literally go on the OSHA website. I think you can just do file a complaint, and then you can type out everything, even upload pictures. I know when I did it, I didn't really know what was gonna happen, or, you know, even though I knew I was leaving the dealership, I was still a little bit worried about retaliation from the dealership. So I didn't attach any pictures. I just did the OSHA complaint online. I said, we don't have clean drinking water. The filters have never ever been changed for that water machine. I get a headache when I drink the drinking water. The water that the drinking water is attached to comes out of the sink, the color white. And the last thing I put in that OSHA complaint was the lift leg safety stops are all missing or broken. And so what I'm talking about, it was a really old dealer. They had a single post lift, so like one big post in the middle with 4 legs that came out. Those 4 legs got to extend out, right? They're supposed to be safety stops, so you can't pull the legs all the way out. And I'll just give you an example. Imagine a car's racked up in the air and like a leg slips and it's able to come all the way out and the car falls down because there's no safety stop. That dealership was really in disrepair. They did not care about the service department. So all the lifts, all the safety stops were either broken or missing. Sure enough, I'd say exactly 1 week later, a welder mysteriously showed up and basically added or fixed all the safety stops on all our lifts. And I'd say not long after that, our service manager himself came to the break room to change the filters on our water machine. I was never contacted by OSHA, but the fact that all those things got fixed so fast, I bet you OSHA had a hand in it. There was no other way. And one of the reasons, even though I knew I was leaving, one of the reasons I was so afraid of retaliation was that when we got hired onto this dealer, we had to read this like really big packet, basically like all like lawyer speak. And there was one clause in that packet where it said something like, you are not allowed to sue the dealership. So imagine a dealership like this making you sign a clause that basically says, we are untouchable, don't even try to touch us. From that point of view, imagine why I would be afraid of retaliation. And just another funny anecdote, it was always a running joke throughout the service department that the laws of America did not apply at this dealership. Certainly so. It definitely felt like that. And so I remember, especially after going to the the second dealership that basically headhunted for me. A lot of people who worked at that dealership were previous employees at, you know, the previous dealer I worked at. So they knew the story of this dealer, right? Like the laws of America did not apply there. And so halfway jokingly, I would use like biblical references about how, you know, my last act of self-sacrifice for that dealer was providing my people with clean drinking water. And that would be my legacy at that dealer, was that, you know, my people could finally drink clean drinking water. For my fellow technicians, current and future, as my legacy and final act of self-sacrifice. So that's how exactly I filed an OSHA complaint against my old automotive dealer and won. But why don't we circle back to that bathroom concern? So we have some human rights violations as well as some flat rate stories to go over with this bathroom concern at this dealership. So it was technicians, parts department, car washer, and detailer. We all shared one bathroom, and the bathroom was also the locker room. So keep in mind, 4 departments, 1 bathroom. In this bathroom, there were only 1 urinal and 2 stalls. Think about that one more time. 4 departments, 1 urinal, 2 stalls. What does this mean? The bathrooms were always overloaded. To make matters worse, I remember the second stall, or I should say the first stall, was always the problematic one. So it was problematic because it was like a cheap residential toilet. It was definitely not meant for the capacity for 4 departments worth of butts to sit on and use. As such, I remember either weekly or bi-weekly, that toilet would always be clogged. And guess who wanted to unclog the toilet? No one. This means that the bathroom was a biohazard for at least a week at a time. The toilet would be clogged with stuff. It became such a joke that people would get like printer paper and like draw like either a biohazard sign. I remember like poop with flies, or like danger, do not enter, or enter at your own risk, like this was a haunted house or something. And so yeah, for like a full week, there'd be like a clogged, festering toilet. I was always curious like whose job it was really to manage the bathrooms. And because we had a detailer shift that worked late, I remember him telling me one time like, oh yeah, you know, the night janitor lady goes in there and so yeah, the night janitor lady goes in there, and when she sees the toilet, she just says, not my problem, and then just cleans the rest of the bathroom but leaves the toilet alone. And then I was like, all right, well, I get where she's coming from. And then also, that's why our toilet is clogged for like week or weeks, plural, at a time. Clogged toilet. Also biohazard in the bathroom. So at a certain point, I became second lead at the dealer. It's been too long, I can't remember all those times who would actually unclog that toilet. But as second lead, I took it upon myself to just unclog the toilet. There was so many other things wrong with that dealership, working there as a technician, that I thought to myself, I don't need one more thing. I'm just gonna handle it myself. So, you know, I would, as second lead, I would take it upon myself to unclog the toilet. Not only does it help me because I can use the bathroom now, but it helps everyone else in these 4 departments. Also, we don't go into a biohazard condition in the small restroom because there's literally a clogged toilet festering for weeks at a time. And here's the flat rate part of this equation. Imagine all the emotional and mental strain of not having clean drinking water, having to be the physically hardest working group of people at the dealership, and then also not having an adequate, reliable restroom to use. All the stress on top of being an automotive technician. And plus the dealership doesn't care about you or doesn't care about these conditions, right? If they did, they'd solve all these things. These issues would not have happened and did not happen for the front-facing part of the dealership, such as sales, reception, and for the service advisors, the front-facing part of the dealership. And again, all this emotional strain and mental strain, the stress, wondering if you would have a bathroom to use or how I was gonna get clean drinking water. My time, again, going back to our first video, my time to diagnose and unclog the toilet so that all of us could go back to work. Under the flat rate system, you know, I'm not clocking in and flagging time to fix the bathrooms, to fix a dealership maintenance issue. I'm not clocking in for that, which means I literally do not get paid for that time to help the entire dealership. So as funny as it sounds, right? Like, what kind of place do you work at? No clean drinking water. You know, one of the main pieces of equipment for you guys, the lifts, are all broken, and you guys don't have a reliable bathroom to use. It may be funny from the outsider's perspective, but you know, now that I think about it, it's just disappointing. And talking about this story, it just reiterates why people don't want to go into this field, right? You are literally treated like subhumans, and to help the entire dealership, you literally do not get compensated for that. Literally not compensated. I mean, $0 an hour to fix a building issue such as keeping the bathrooms in working order. Because obviously, right, no one else is doing it. No one else in the dealership, the janitors, no one else is keeping the bathrooms in working order. So again, whose job has it become to fix a dealership building issue now?